Back when the leaks for Kirara came out, for version 3.7, I knew I wanted to get her. Having skipped Baiju, I needed a Dendro shielder, as they would be very valuable for things like Bloom teams. And on my quest for Kirara, I was wishing, and I got myself a 4-star. It was my 25th copy of Genshin. The next wish, and I skipped. What did I see? It was Siwon Keqing. But I wasn't mad. Do I use Keqing? No. But it was an early guarantee, and that is incredibly rare for me. I kept wishing, and I found myself around 40 pity, so for the first time in about 2 years, I actually spent some money on the game, and I got Kirara on the first stray single pool after spending like 40 quid on the game. But then I did one more temple and got my second early 5-star, hence the bio on the game at the moment. And that is the story of how I somehow accidentally got the character who is the topic of today's video, Yae Miko. Now, if I had a nickel for every time an Electro character was released meh and then became good after the introduction of Dendro, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it's happened twice. And nickels are useless to me because I'm British. On her release, I deemed Yae a pretty meh character. Having constant Electro DPS on the field was nice, but due to Electro having no amazing reactions pre-version 3.0, it was kinda just extra damage, and her ult, still to this day, it's just a massive chunk of Electro damage. Now, she has her uses outside of Dendro, so she wasn't completely useless, she just underperformed a bit in my opinion. But after the release of version 3.0, she became one of the strongest characters for aggravate teams, being able to have constant on-field Electro application, and being a Catalyst user, she can always apply Electro even if her skill isn't out on the field. Regardless, if you pair her with any Dendro character, more specifically Nahida, it's gonna be a whole lot of damage potential. Like most Catalyst users, her normal attack hits for 3 Electro hits. Nothing massively special, and her charge attack, as well as having a great animation, deals Electro damage in a pretty big stray area, which is actually pretty interesting for most Catalyst users, as they usually just have a big attack. Not many that I can think of off the top of my head have one that goes in that sort of hitbox. Seeing as I run her on an aggravate team and sometimes Hyperbloom team, this is decently effective for proccing cores for Hyperbloom, as some Dendro cores can get spawned far away, and her charge attack having a big hitbox couldn't actually reach far away without having to move across the field. It can also do the same thing for advancing the aggravate reaction sequence. A stylistic thing to note is similar to characters like Ningguang and Nahida, her Catalyst only shows up when her charge attack is used, and I really like that visual detail on Catalyst users, as the Witsith looks kinda ass on her visually. Seeing as there isn't anything interesting with her normal attack, I'll move right on to her main ability, the Elemental skill.
Right here. Emerge. Right now.
For her skill, she moves in a direction of your choosing, like Xiao's dash, but it's much slower and it deals no damage. Instead, it leaves behind a Seisho Sakura, I hope I said that right, with 3 charges, and 3 of these little fox statues can be on the field at once. It's worth noting that this cap applies to co-op as well. Having a team of 4 Yae Mikos doesn't grant the ability to litter the field with 12 statues, the cap will always still be 3. If they are close enough together, they link, increasing their damage with how many of them are connected, so dashing in a triangle or a straight line is a quick, surefire way to get the maximum damage, as it won't spread the Seisho too thin from each other. This is Yae's best power, hands down. It's constant Electro damage to nearby opponents, and it even still applies when Yae is off field. It makes 1 particle of energy per enemy hit, with a cooldown of 2.5 seconds, and yeah, that sounds pretty meh, especially seeing it's just the most expensive ult in the game at a cost of 90. Yeah, Raiden has the same cost, but she doesn't really count, as her whole kit is based on having a lot of energy recharge. This power is her best use by far, being able to proc reactions, provide extra damage, and for some reason hit plants? Okay. Despite how simple this power is, it's unbelievably useful for field damage and reactions. It has a cooldown of 4 seconds per Seisho Sakura, making a 12-second cooldown for all 3. And in the midst of the fight, that is very generous, seeing as the statues themselves have a duration of 14 seconds, so with correct management of this skill, you can have a near 100% uptime off the statues, giving you constant off-field Electro damage. Now, I say near 100%, because yeah, you can replace them all before they despawn, but her ult has a little feature that I'll mention when I talk about her ult, and seeing as there's nothing else to really mention with her skill, I'll go on to that right now.
I'm always watching.
Great Secret Art Tenko Genshin summons a massive fuck you thunderbolt from the heavens to strike enemies, and that's pretty much it. It's a lot of Electro damage and nothing else. Now about that detail I mentioned a minute ago, When Yae casts this power, all current Seisho Sakura on the field will be destroyed and become an extra Tenko Thunderbolt that strikes after the initial hit of her burst. With all three, this can do a lot of damage. In the past, my Yae has done over 172,000 damage with all 4 hits of this attack. And generously, with her first Ascension passive, each Tenko Thunderbolt created by Seisho Sakura's destruction will fully refund a charge of her skill. So if you put down all 3 statues, cast her ult, the charges for her skill will be fully refunded, allowing you to recast them immediately. These few seconds where they're destroyed and need recasting are the only time I usually have no Seisho Sakura on the field in combat, due to being able to manage its duration pretty well. Again, like her skill, it's a pretty simple power, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Characters' ults don't need paragraphs of descriptions like Nihida's to be useful or effective. Take the Wanderers. His burst is just a lot of ammo damage and nothing else. It's capable of hitting big numbers, but it's still very simple. Now, I don't usually mention passive talents, but I will in this case, as I find Yae's second passive super amusing. For her second passive, the damage of Seisho Sakura's Thunderbolts get increased with every point of EM that Yae has. Now at the time of the release, I was pretty confused why she randomly needed EM. Electro's reactions weren't anything special outside of Dendro, and she was released before version 3.0. Going to the joke I made at the start, Kuki, who also received a massive buff when 3.0 released, being in Hyperblip and Aggravate teams, also has her second Ascension passive related to EM. Personally, I'd like to believe the Hoyoverse knew these characters would be meh, knew Dendro would be EM based, and knew these two characters would be a lot better at the release of Dendro, so they gave them EM based passives. But that's probably just complete bullshit, but I find it funny. We have Dendro now, and Yae is definitely best suited for Aggravate teams, in my opinion. So EM is very, very useful for her. And despite how weird it seemed at the time for giving her EM scaling, it makes the Widsith all the more viable for her. One other side note, this is a completely unscripted part, so sorry if I ramble for this bit. It's a quick complaint with her ult. When you cast her ult, it will target the nearest enemy, as most instant hits ults do. So the initial Thunderbolt will hit, but the Tenko Thunderbolts will not hit the nearest enemy, they will hit where the first bolt struck. So you could cast the maximum damage potential of her ult, and you could kill one enemy with the initial hit of the bolt, and the other 3 Tenko Thunderbolts will be completely wasted, because there could be no other enemy nearby and they would keep striking that area. So it's probably best to use her ult in a situation where there are a lot of enemies in a group, because that way if the main target, the one that the ability targets, die, then the Tenko Thunderbolts will still hit the surrounding enemies. It's just a little side note that's to keep in mind when you cast her ult. It's end of video Mixel again. Seeing as I've really got back into the swing of Genshin, I wanted to make another character analysis video before starting on the second half of the Star Roll video, and I'm super glad that video did well. Thank you for the support on that one. Now this video's done, I'm gonna get started on writing another 3k word script for the funny space train game. But Fontaine's coming out soon, so I might make a semi-unscripted video of just my first impressions of Fontaine, so because that could be fun, because the trailer came out, one of the trailers came out today with the first character previews. At the time I'm recording this, I don't know if I'm going to get this out on the same day, but whatever. I'll put a thing on screen if it's not loaded by then. I'm going to stop rambling now, so you can go back about your day. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.